So what do you look for in a person when you do your hiring, when you interview someone? How do you know that person's has that quality that you're looking for? That because at a certain point, resumes and CVs all start to look the same, right?
Yeah. I look for three things. I look first uh, that we share a common set of values. If I don't get that, it's a problem. One of my small little exercises I do when I'm about to give a final offer to somebody, I always make sure I try to invite them out to have a meal with me. And during the meal, I'm not watching what wine they order.
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching how they treat the waiter or the waitress.
Mm-hmm.
Because that tells me a lot about the kind of person they are. Could they be a leader someday? Could they treat people in different settings well? So the value system is key, because if we don't share the same values, then we're going to have problems very quickly. The second thing I look for is my sense of their discipline and ambition. And those two things are two sides of a coin. There are many people who have a lot of ambition, but no discipline. And there are many people who have a lot of discipline, but kind of, are riding along with the company, and they're not contributing to the energy of a company. So especially depending on the level of people I'm hiring, but even across the board, I try to look for people, as I always say, who can fit in the locomotive in the front of the train, not
Mm-hmm.
just in the back sitting, kind of riding along with everybody. Now, not everybody can be in the locomotive, but that they have the capacity to get to the locomotive at a minimum. So discipline is that. It's commitment, it's discipline. And then on the other side of that, I also look for ambition and passion. Because if they don't have that, it's very hard to, you can incent people and get them to be excited, but if they're not predisposed to be ambitious and passionate people, it's a problem. So that's the second thing I look for. And of course, the third thing I look for is, do they know the subject matter? Do they know it well? Do they know it better than me? So if I'm hiring someone to lead my, intellectual property area, I want to make sure this person knows far more than me about IP. If I'm hiring somebody who's an HR person, I want to make sure they are experts on what they do. And if they're not, they know how to get the knowledge. So expertise and depth of knowledge is very important. Those are the three things I look for. Mm-hmm. Then there are other aspects unique to a job. Some jobs require creativity. Some jobs require actually much more, like your chief compliance officer needs not be necessarily creative. You want them to be very precise. So there are some additional aspects and depending on the job. And I've been very fortunate. I have people who've been collaborating with me, as I just mentioned to you, for over 30 years. And it's not like I rehired them now. They've been with me all those decades. And I'm still lucky to have them by my side.
Have you ever made a mistake, like someone you just hired and they just because how can you gauge all those things you're talking about in an interview? I feel like unless it's a multi-stage interview and all that stuff. Some interviews are really elaborate. I feel like a lot of times it comes down to, do I like this person and are they enthusiastic about the job? Yeah. I've done so many interviews, and I feel like when I get callbacks, when I get offers, I feel like it comes down to, did I just vibe with the person who interviewed me? And because the credentials are the credentials, right? You typically don't get called for the interview if you don't meet that initial threshold. There are certain kind of little quirks and things that I've heard interviewers talk about. One of my professors says he was hiring like high-level people. He'd take them to lunch just like you, and then he'd say, I need to put something in your trunk. And if he found a set of golf clubs in there, he wouldn't hire them. So just things like that. But how do you gauge all that in a limited time? And
so I've made many mistakes. Mm-hmm. I must admit, less as I gain experience and with time. Um, it's very important when interviewing people to be turning off some of your personal emotional things and listening to the people and seeing them in the environment where they need to function, rather than seeing them as people who kind of work just with you. Because sometimes I need someone in a position that may not be necessarily my favorite person to spend the day with, but they need to have certain traits to be in that position. So with time, you refine your antennas. You become a little more refined, in looking for traits, for the way they answer questions. I also think that we owe it to the people we interview to spend more time than less time. Sometimes we're rushing, and frankly, that messes a lot of people's lives. You move them from a job to another job, and then, oh my God, 2 months later, you say, this person didn't know any of this. So I think we have a responsibility to put ourselves in their shoes. They have families, they have kids. We're asking them to make decisions. Let's also do our part so we can be. And I think this is something that many people don't do. The focus is on what's important for me, what's important for my company, how can I get the best person at the best possible salary level, versus thinking that plus, how do I make sure that this person makes a move that will lift them and lift their families and lead them to better places? And by the way, people feel that when you're interviewing them. So I've learned over time to also focus on that, and it's paid off beautifully.
All right. Okay. So you're actually looking at it from both ways, whether the person's going to fit in the company. You're not just looking at it in a selfish way, but whether the company is going to benefit the person and their family.
Yeah.
That's interesting.